start. Well,
I've got a note here.
okay, so Deuteronomy 32, verse, I'm going to have you read 44 to 47.
Moses came with Joshua, son of Nun, and spoke all the words of this song in the hearing of the people. When Moses finished reciting all these words to all Israelites, he said to them, "Take to heart all the words I have solemnly declared to you this day, so that you may command your children to obey carefully all the words of this law. They are not just idle words for you, they are your life. By then you will live long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess."
So remember last week we left off with that really depressing song, but now encouraging stuff. Isn't that great? One of Satan's greatest lies is that life is useless, it's futile. There's no reason to obey God, no reason to serve Him. And we can look at the world and we can see evil people prospering. And some people wonder, well, what's wrong with this world that the evil prosper? And I'm a good person and I'm just struggling. So that's one of Satan's lies. Mm-hmm. But from an eternal perspective, it is never futile to love God and to obey Him. We may struggle on earth. We will struggle on earth. Yeah. Eternally, we will be with God. So much better. But did the Israelites take that awful song to heart? Did they pay attention to it?
Kind of, sort of, maybe.
Yeah, Moses said, take to heart all these words. It's the same for us. When we're singing songs, are you paying attention to the words at all? Are you hearing what they're saying? Are you taking it to heart? That's the same kind of idea. We're singing about God. Sometimes our faces don't look like it, but
we know because we're up there.
Yeah,
watching.
we can see it.
Oh, we can see you.
Yeah. So here there's an emphasis on living better and living longer. One day, aging is going to overtake all of us. We can't get out of it. Our bodies are going to shut down. We can't stop that. But what we can stop is an attitude of anger and bitterness. If anyone had the right to have a bitter heart, it would be Moses. I mean, he's led these guys for 40 years and put up with them to bring them to the promised land, and he doesn't get the last step. But he is not bitter at all because he knows it's God's plan. He could have been self-pitying and depressed and resentful, but he wasn't at all. What an example. And it's easy for us to get angry and bitter over something. And that's not what God wants for us. We can dwell on our failures in our life and the hardships we grew on, or we can remember God's faithfulness through it. And we can grow from those. We can keep looking to the future in faith. And that's what Moses did. Okay, now to finish up Deuteronomy, verses 48 through 52.
On that same day, the Lord told Moses, "Go up into the Abram range to Mount Nebo in Moab, across from Jericho, and view Canaan, excuse me, the land I am giving the Israelites as their own possession. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to the people. Just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people, This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the desert of Zin, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. Therefore you will see the land only from a distance. You will not enter the land I am giving to the people of Israel.
120 years old. God says, go climb that mountain. I can't imagine climbing a mountain now. 120 years old. So as Beverly's version said, Abiram is a mountain range, and Mount Nebo is a mountain in it, also called Pisgah. It rises 4,000 feet above the Dead Sea, but there's a valley in front of it, so he didn't have to climb 4,000 feet. But it's like 4,000 feet above sea level. So even though he's not going to be able to cross into the Promised Land, God is merciful, and he's going to let him at least see it, and we'll see his view in chapter 34. But first, we're going to do chapter 33. Just verse 1.
I thought it was interesting what he said. Why? This is because you broke faith with me.
Do you think he needed to be reminded?
And you did not uphold my holiness.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty serious.
Yeah. And again,
Reflection for us.
Yes.
you know, it seems like he had done such a small thing, but he was the leader. He was to be the example, and he wasn't being an example and obeying God. So he got a stricter punishment. Okay, so verse 1 in chapter 33.
The Lord came from Sinai and dawned on them.
Is that 33?
The 33.
Just right up here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, sweetheart. I didn't have my glasses on.
Oh, okay.
Y'all pray for me.
That's not close.
Now this is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said,
Well, after the last song, thankfully Moses doesn't leave it there. He leaves with a blessing. He looked at this people that he's led them as a shepherd for all those years, and he couldn't leave without blessing them with a real blessing.
And this is last talk and bless.
These are his last words to these people. This chapter is similar to when Jacob blessed his 12 sons in Genesis 49. And Moses recorded that one too, because he was the one that wrote Genesis. Now, Jacob's blessings weren't all blessings. They were, a lot of them, they were sound more like curses. Well, Moses is not going to have anything like that in here. These are really blessings. His primary focus is on the relationship of these tribes to the Lord. So much more pleasant than chapter 28 with all those curses, and then that song, so much nicer. He's going to give a blessing to each tribe, and the type of blessing is, there's 3 types of blessings he's going to give. Some he's going to give blessings as wishes for the tribes, like is when you see Reuben, Gad, and Joseph, it's kind of like what he envisions for them, what he wishes for them. Then there's a couple that are prayers directed to God. That's Judah and Levi. And then there are descriptions of a tribe's way of life. So 3 kinds of blessings in here. None of them are negative. That's good to hear. There's no accusations of wrongdoing in here, even though there's been wrongdoing all along. Now, the order of the blessings is not in the same order that Jacob blessed his sons. They seem to follow the geographic layout of where these tribes will end up, from south to north. And now in these blessings, Levi and Joseph are going to get a bigger section. They're going to get as much as the rest of them combined. They get a lot more attention. Now Levi is going to be their spiritual, religious leader, while Joseph's group is going to be their political leaders for a while. So first, an introduction to this thing. Verses 2 through 5.
Not even to 6.
Not even to 6.
He said, "The Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones, with flaming fire at his right hand. Yes, he loved his people. All his holy ones were in his hand. So they followed, in your steps, receiving direction from you, when Moses commanded us a law, as a possession for the assembly of Jacob. Thus the Lord became king of Jeshurun, when the heads of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together."
Okay, so this is a dramatic and grand introduction, seeing God and his glory and power coming to them. When it says he came from 10,000s of holy ones, there's debate about who these holy ones are. I mean, some of your versions may say saints, which is just another word for holy ones, but usually saints refer to believers. But most people believe that he's talking about angels here, which would kind of fit because angels are God's army, and Israel's getting ready to go into war. We see mountains in here. The mountains are an important part. They're like landmarks. We see mountains mentioned over and over again because you can say from this mountain to that mountain and everything in between. So an interesting thing about it, Islamic scholars believe that this section predicts 3 separate visitations from God. One on Sinai to Moses, another one on Seir to Jesus, and a third one on Paran to Muhammad. Problems with that, Seir is in Egypt. Not in Palestine, not where Jesus ministered. And Paran, they associated Paran with Mecca, nowhere close. So, and this chapter is about blessing Israel. If there were anything about Islam in there, that would not be a blessing to Israel at all. So they seem off on this. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with a prediction about Islam. Verse 3, it talks about how they followed. It literally means they laid down at God's feet. It's a sign of total surrender. In here, last week we saw that word Jeshurun in Moses' song, and it was not complimentary. It was very sarcastic because Jeshurun was like a pet name for Israel. And last week it was like being really sarcastic. This time it's not. It's being used as a pet name for Israel, a beloved name. Okay, so now to the blessings. Some of them are really short and some not. Verse 6.
Okay. Let Reuben live and not die, nor his people be few.
Okay. It's a general blessing for the tribe of Reuben. Now, Reuben was the oldest son of Jacob, and he should have had the birthright. but he did things that were really wrong, and so he lost the birthright. And he was known for a lack of self-control, and he was immoral, and so his tribe kind of followed along that. When Jacob did his blessing back in Genesis, he said, Reuben, you're not going to excel. So Moses is almost praying for Reuben to just survive. Just survive, Reuben. Just, my prayer is you survive.
Did you say he was the oldest?
He was the oldest of Jacob's sons and should have had the birthright.
Right.
But no, he blew it. The first few sons blew it. So they settle, the tribe of Reuben, they settle on the other side of the Jordan, and they are going to face trouble after trouble from their Moabite neighbors. They start off as a pretty big tribe, but eventually they grow so small that they become a nomadic tribe, not even living in cities. They wander around. As far as we know, Reuben never produced a prophet, a judge, or a king. So they survive. They don't really live. And Moses' prayer is that they do live, and they're not really living.
So in Genesis 49:4, it tells why he is
Yeah.
no longer.
Yeah.
He went to bed with Jacob's wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strange thing to do.
It was a sign of wanting to have the power of your father. Okay, verse 7. Let's try.
And this he said of Judah, Hear, O Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him in to his people. With your hands contend for him, and be a help against his adversaries.
So Judah means praise. And Moses prayed that the Lord would hear their voice of praise. So he's praying for the blessing and sustenance of the tribe of Judah. Now they are the one that is prophesied to bring the Messiah. And that prophecy was originally found in Genesis 49:10 in Jacob's blessing. So pretty much it's a really nice blessing here. But sure, you would think Messiah's coming from this one. It should be a long one, but nope, this is nice and short. That's all that needs to be said. Next one is long, verses 8 through 11.
About Levi, he said, Your Thummim and Urim belong to the man you favored. You tested him at Messah. You contended with him at the waters of Meribah. He said of his father and mother, I have no regard for them. He did not recognize his brothers or acknowledge his own children, but he watched over your word and guarded your covenant. He teaches your precepts to Jacob and your law to Israel. He offers incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Bless all his skills, O Lord, and be pleased with the work of his hands. Smite the loins of those who rise up against him. Strike his foes till they rise no more.
Okay, this one's probably longer because Levi's an important tribe with an important job to do. They're the priests. This is Moses' own tribe. So if you remember it, we learned about the Urim and Thummim, which were two stones that the high priest, when a decision had to be made, he prayed to God and then he pulled out or did something with a stone, and that was the answer. We don't know exactly how they worked, but they were important. They were precious too. Verse 8, it talks about the rebellion at Massa, also known as Meribah. Levi isn't even mentioned in the original story in Exodus 17:2. So we don't know what this is about. They're not, who knows why they're there. verse 9, then it talks, this is referring to the incident with the golden calf. And one of the things they did was when Moses said, who is going to stand with me and punish Israel? The Levites came and stood with him. And any of the Levites that didn't come stand with him were killed by their own brothers, their own Levites. So that's what that's referring to. These Levites that stood with Moses were so committed, and they were told to kill anyone that didn't come on their side. They even killed their members of their own tribe if they wouldn't repent. And so they get this special position of being priests because of that incident, because they were so faithful to God. And so they get a special place among the tribes. And one of their major jobs is to teach others about God's word. You've got the group in there that's in charge of giving sacrifices and the high priest, but a big job was teaching the people. Verse 11 talks about crush the loins of his adversary. It's talking about the thigh, the largest muscle in your body. This symbolized making someone powerless and probably impotent. So if you crush their loins, they're not having any more kids, and they're going to die out. So they are going to help lead against the enemies and help crush these loins. Okay, verse 12. Miss Betty?
Is that me?
Mm-hmm.
Just the one verse.
Just the one verse.
Of Benjamin, he said, may the beloved of the Lord dwell in security by him, who shields him all the day, and he dwells between his shoulders.
Benjamin was Joseph's younger brother, and Jacob loved Benjamin. God loved the tribe of Benjamin. They held a special place in his heart. One of the blessings they are going to receive in the land that they're assigned, in the middle of it is Jerusalem. They are going to be in possession of the holy city. It's going to take a few centuries for them to really become the holy city, but it's in the land of Benjamin. The first king of Israel, Saul, is from Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin, they were fierce and warlike, but God still loved them. When it says dwells between his shoulders, that means they are given a place of peace and security. And that's kind of the land, the area that they're going to live in is a more protected area. So they get a special blessing. Okay, you get a good one. It's Joseph verses 13 through 17.
He said about Joseph, may his land be blessed by the Lord with the dew of the heavens bounty and watery depths that lie beneath, with the bountiful harvest from the sun and the abundant yield of the seasons, with the best products of the ancient mountains and the bounty of the eternal hills, with the choice gifts of the land and everything in it, and with the favor of him who appeared in the burning bush. May these rest on the head of Joseph, on the crown of the prince of his brothers. His firstborn bull had a splendor, and horns like those of the wild ox. He bores all the peoples with them to the ends of the earth. Such are the 10,000 of Ephraim, and such are the thousands of Manasseh.
Okay, so this is the longest one. but it's really about two half tribes. We don't have the tribe of Joseph. These are about the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, who were the sons of Joseph. And they are blessed numerically. You can see from that last verse, Ephraim is going to have more people in their tribe than any other tribe. And then Manasseh comes up right behind them. And they're going to be powerful. It talks about horns. Horns are a sign of power. You think about animals that have horns, and those horns are used to attack other animals or things like that. Unfortunately, they kind of become prideful, and they don't really help the other tribes when they should be helping them. But they are going to be blessed with really fertile land and good crops. Okay, next tribe, verse 18 and 19.
Moses said this about the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar. May the people of Zebulun prosper in their travels. May the people of Issachar prosper at home in their tents. They summon the people to the mountain to offer proper sacrifices there. They benefit from the riches of the sea and the hidden treasures in the sand.
Okay, so here we see two tribes thrown together again. Jacob, when he gave his blessings, they were thrown together then. Don't know why. Why don't they deserve their own blessing? But they get a blessing. So they were kind of between the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean. So they prosper in trading because they have some really good deals with the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians are the sailors. They're a nation. We mentioned before, Israel didn't like getting on that water. The Sea of Galilee is one thing. They did not like the Mediterranean Sea. So they didn't have their own ships that went trading with other countries. They worked with the Phoenicians, who were known to be sailors. And they traded in gold and silver and pearl and coral. So they are going to be blessed financially. That area is still today around Tyre and that area, very, very successful area. It talks about hidden treasures of the sand. What's interesting is they've recently discovered natural gas fields out on the ocean, right in that area. So there's hidden treasures in that sand. Okay, tribe of Gad, verse 20 and 21.
About Gad, he said, "Blessed is he who enlarges Gad's domain. Gad lives there like a lion, tearing at arm or head. He chose the best land for himself. The leader's portion was kept for him. When the heads of the people assembled, he carried out the Lord's righteous will and his judgments concerning Israel."
Okay, so the tribe of Gad is one of the tribes that settles on the east side of the Jordan, and it's a great part of the land that they settle in. Lots of lush crops and things like that. It talks about the lion. What it really means is the lioness. If you know anything about lions, male lions are the laziest things in the world. It's the females that do all the hunting. So in Hebrew, it's actually lioness, because she's the one that's going to go tearing off arms and scalps and things like that. And Gad is really faithful in battle. Remember, the tribes that are east of the Jordan, one of the agreements was they were going to come and help. Well, Gad is very helpful. They are very faithful to that. And they're faithful for a long time. In 1 Chronicles 12, David is going to need troops, and they come from Gad, a lot of these troops. So they are faithful in their battles. Okay, you get a really long one. Verse 22.
And of Dan he said, Dan is the lion's cub that leaps from Bashan.
Now, this is the one that might not be very complimentary. Dan is a pretty troublesome tribe. They're the ones in Judges 18 that are going to introduce idolatry into Israel. Jeroboam is later going to set up a golden calf. You know how God feels about those golden calves. He's going to set it up in his territory, and they're going to become the center of idol worship. So, and when it talks about Bashan, so Dan was originally given land in southern Israel, but they never could quite conquer it. So they move up, way up to the northern Israel. Bashan is way up in the north. Moses is given this blessing, and he already knows the land. I think they've already kind of assigned lands, and he already knows Dan's supposed to be down there, but they're going to end up in Bashan. He knows this. This is God telling him. God gave him these words. And Dan is just trouble. And because they end up as a tribe in the north, it's the northern tribes that eventually split from the southern tribes. Yeah, so Dan is up in there too. Got some problems. Okay, verse 23. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, sated with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord, possess the lake and the south. Now that sounds so much nicer. They are blessed with favor. They get the land around the Sea of Galilee. You can imagine this good land there. And it says, when it says possess the lake and the south, it sounds so nice. What it means is you're going to take it by force. You're going to grab it. You're going to take it and kick those people out, and you're going to possess that land. Okay, back around Asher, verse 24 and 25.
The most blessed of sons is Asher. Let him be favored by his brothers, and let him buckle his feet in oil. The bolt of your gates will be iron and bronze, and your strength will equal your days. Oh, that's so nice.
It is. And this goes right along with the blessing that Jacob had given them back in Genesis 49. Now, the land they get is going to be famous for olive trees, and that's where they get oil. Dipping your foot in oil as a sign of wealth, super wealth. They are going to be a wealthy tribe. Now, people who came from the north to attack, they had to come through Asher's land. So their cities, they had to make sure their cities were well protected. So the iron and bronze bolts are what holds a city gate in place. So they're going to have strong fortresses. So they're going to have all their towns are going to have strong defenses. It's still the area in northern Israel where Asher would be, between Lebanon and Syria and Israel, still an embattled area. There's always fighting back and forth between them. Okay, that is the end of the tribes. But did you notice someone's missing? Simeon. We don't see Simeon in any blessings. What's up with that?
He's second son.
I think he was the second son, and he lost. You know, when Judah disobeyed, he should have had the blessing of the firstborn, but nope, he messed up too. They think he might have been included with Judah. Yeah, Scroll back up to Judah. Judah. No, Judah's just like the, nope.
It was, I thought it was a Levi. Someplace I had read, it was Simeon and Levi.
It's not here.
I can see it.
No Simeon.
Maybe it was in the Genesis.
Could have been. Yeah. We're not sure why. And we don't hear a lot about Simeon.
Did Jacob bless him?
Yeah, Jacob included him, but yeah, why he's not here, I don't know. But it's not a mistake. It's not like he forgot one of his 12 kids or something. It's this is God giving the word, so yeah, it's not like God forgot him.
So in 49 it says Simeon and Levi are two of a kind. Their weapons are instruments of violence. Doesn't seem like that would be Levi.
It was Levi at that point.
Oh.
Well, and remember why Levi was chosen to be the priestly tribe is because they stood with Moses and then they killed everybody that didn't stand with him. So they're not always peaceful.
Yeah.
So I mean, we think priests and peace and not always. Okay, so now we are going to finish off this chapter. Who did we?
Well, it could have been with Judah because on the map it shows Simeon's kind of in the middle of Judah.
And I think they ended up kind of absorbed by Judah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Did we leave off with you, Beverly? Yeah. Rest of this chapter.
Start with 28?
26.
Start with 26.
Yeah.
There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides on the heavens to help you, and on the clouds in his majesty. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will drive out your enemy before you, saying, destroy him.
Through the end of the chapter.
So Israel will live in safety alone. Jacob's spring is secure in the land of grain and new wine, where the heavens drop dew. Blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord. He is your shield and helper, and your glorious sword. Your enemies will cower before you, and you will trample down their high places.
Okay. So the real blessing of all this is God is with them. You have these individual blessings, but the biggest blessing is God. And purposely he uses that phrase, O Jeshurun.
Is that right?
No, Jeshurun is, I forgot what it specifically means, but it's a pet name. It's like saying, Israel, my baby, my dearest ones. It's kind of like God saying that. Moses emphasizes how great God is and that God uses that greatness on behalf of this people. God saved them. He had saved them from from Egypt. He had saved them through the desert. He will continue saving them. God saved us. He saved us from our past. He saves us in our lives today, and he will save us through eternity. Don't miss verse 27. That's one of the best verses in the Bible, I think. It says, the eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. What could be better than dwelling in God? Next time you feel alone, think about that. You're not alone. God's there. And the everlasting arms his arms never get tired. He's like a shepherd. He's taking care of all the sheep, but his most beloved, his ones that need the most tender care, his lambs, he's holding in his arms. He's taking special care of them. And the good news is you're one of his lambs. He's holding you in his eternal arms. But then again, these arms, they could be stretched out against the enemy. They're protective or they're destructive. Yeah. And it's our choice on how those arms are for us. As his children, they're protecting us. For the rest of the world, they're going to be destructive. Mm-hmm. The last half of verse 29 talks about treading upon their backs. This is talking about conquering their enemies. Because when you conquered your enemy, you brought the leader in front of you, and they laid down, and you put your foot on top of them. It was a sign that they were a conquered people. So God's saying your enemies, you're going to have your foot on their backs. You're defeating them all. So I think it's really purposeful that he starts off with talking about the glory of God and ends off by talking about the glory of God. And the individual tribal blessings are in between. But they are to remember the bigger blessing is God. And that God is with them. And they are his people.
Yeah, but now, this time, our fight is not with flesh and blood, but with spiritual darkness that is in heaven. So this means spiritual for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't fight physically.
No. But the day may come.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to fight spiritually. We will have people that fight physically too, but but okay, last chapter.
Yeah, that's it.
And these were Moses' last words to the people. What a great way to end for him. But now his time has come. So Deuteronomy 34, verses 1 through 3.
Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan.
Through 3.
Oh, 3. Okay. All Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar.
Okay, so Moses, ever obedient Moses, he goes up that mountain, even though he knows it means he's going to die. Now we see mountains again. Mountains have been so important in the life of Moses. He saw a burning bush on a mountain. He got those 10 commandments off that same mountain. Now his life is going to end on a mountain. So he climbs Mount Nebo again. Okay, here I got it rose 2,740 feet above the valley that he was in. So not a little hike. And again, 4,000 feet above the Dead Sea. So it was high in the air. From this mountain, he could see all of the Promised Land, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So the list of places we see is like a counterclockwise circle from the north to the south. So he sees Gilead, which is 100 miles north of where he's going to be. Obviously no smog. Then it sweeps down and he sees 60 miles west to the Mediterranean Sea. And then it sweeps down and he sees 50 miles south to Zoar. The whole nation of Israel he can see from this place. Now, you can't see the same view today. You can't go find that spot and say, okay, there's this. It kind of backs up the idea that maybe Moses was viewing this as his spirit was going to heaven, because you just can't see that from anywhere now. But
he has a good eyes.
Yeah, 120 years old. You know, his life. But that's something we don't know. That's not exactly what Scripture says. So don't know how he saw it, but he saw it. God let him see it. And it's important to remember this mountain is not in Israel, not in the Promised Land, because he's not allowed to go into the Promised Land. Mm-hmm. So this land is still on the other side of the Jordan, this mountain. Verse 4.
And the Lord said to him, "This is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go there."
Is that like rubbing salt into a wound? He already knows, but he's looking at it as a blessing. He gets to see it. Even though he himself will not possess the land, his descendants and his flock that he brought, they're going to be there. They're taking the land that was originally promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now the difference will be they are actually going to own the land. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not own land. They owned. Abraham bought one little plot of land in what was that, Mamre?
To bury his wife.
To bury Sarah, and he was buried. That's the only land any of those guys ever owned. So the Israelites are going to go in and own it all. They're supposed to own it all. They don't always do the best job. So imagine Moses feeling. It's got to be bittersweet. Kind of a mix of accomplishment and disappointment. Mm-hmm. He saw the end result of his life's work. And he heard God say, "Here's the land. This is it. This is the promised land that we have fought against all the elements to get all these people here. Here we are." Yeah. But you don't get to go in. Yeah, so let him know one more time. I think that's more for us to remind us, because I don't think Moses ever forgot that he wasn't going to be allowed to go in.
I remember that every day.
Yeah. Okay, verse 5 through 8.
And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days, until the time of weeping and mourning was over.
So maybe he could have seen all of that.
He could. His
because
eyes were not
his
dimmed.
eyes were undimmed.
Yeah. So there was a bald little man that was sitting in a rocking chair on a porch, and he just smiling and rocking away. And someone came by, and he was just thought how wonderful his smile was. And he came up and he said, I can't help noticing how happy you are. What's your secret of a long life?" And he said, I smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and I drink a case of whiskey each week. I eat fast food. I never exercise. And the guy says, "No way. How old are you?" 26. So that is not Moses. Moses is 120 years old, and his eyesight's great. He's
climb up a mountain.
Yeah, he's climbing up that mountain and everything else. He seems to be in great health. He doesn't die as a feeble old man. He dies because God says it's your time. Something interesting I read was that he is, other than Caleb and Joshua, he is 40 years older than anybody else. Because, that generation had died. So he outlived almost everybody else. And he had been told that a normal life would be 70 to 80 years after that point. And he's 120. So he's been really blessed.
Do you ever think they were sitting there going, can he die already so we can go?
Yeah, just waiting on you. Okay, so this is Moses' epitaph. And it's a simple epitaph. It's not Moses, the prince of Egypt, Moses, the murderer of an Egyptian, Moses, the shepherd in the wilderness, Moses, the spokesman of a nation, Moses, the miracle worker, Moses, the prophet, Moses, the man who saw a piece of God's glory, Moses, who never entered the promised land. All those were accurate. But he's Moses, the servant of the Lord. What a wonderful way to be remembered. It sounds so humble, but it's really hard to live like it. To be satisfied with being the servant of the Lord. And that's just something so precious. It's something we should all want in our lives. A true test of a servant of the Lord is, how do they react when someone treats them as a servant of the Lord?
They're probably okay with it because
if someone is truly a servant of the Lord, If you're not, then you're going to say, yeah. So Moses died just as God said he would. Now, Jewish traditions, because we haven't had a Jewish tradition in a while, they say that Moses died as God took away his soul with a kiss. Isn't that nice? A Jewish rabbi during the medieval times, Maimonides, he wrote that there are 903 ways to die, but this was the best. There's people that have tested that 903. So it says, and God buried Moses. And God was there with him when he died.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it should be reassuring because Jesus is with us when we die. So I think I've always had the impression that Moses is buried up on that mountain somewhere. But that's not what it says. He was buried in a valley. And this valley is in Moab. His body didn't even make it into the promised land because God said he would not be in the promised land. And that's as specific as it gets. No one has found the bones of Moses. God would not allow anyone to find the body of Moses. No one could build a mausoleum for him with his bones in it. No one could build something to worship Moses' bones. No one could sell Moses' bones. I mean, things that are sold. I mean, you can buy a piece of Jesus' cross.
Yeah.
God didn't want that happening with Moses. It also prevented the Israelites from carrying Moses' bones.
Like they did Jacob's.
Yeah, they still have Jacob's bones with them. Or is it Joseph's? Joseph's bones. Yeah, they still have Joseph's bones with them because Joseph wanted to be buried in Israel. But Moses' bones, not allowed to go. Later, in Jude 9, we're to learn that Michael, the archangel, fought with Satan over the body of Moses. According to Jude, Michael's going to win this because he's going to plead to God to help him. We don't know why Satan wanted the body of Moses. Some people think that he wanted people to start worshiping the body of Moses, because that would lead them away. Some say he wanted to desecrate the body of Moses. He might have felt he had a right to the body of Moses because Moses was a murderer, but he doesn't get it. God had another purpose for Moses' body. We'll see him again in Matthew 17 when he appears on the Mount of Transfiguration with Elijah and Jesus in his body. Okay, so Israel mourns 30 days. That was the traditional mourning time, and then they move on. It's time to move on. God's plan doesn't end with Moses. It never ends with any man. The torch is passed on, and God's work goes on. I know that's true with the Maccabees. Was it Richard Blackaby, the author of Experiencing God, just died. And
Henry died. And Richard's the son.
Henry died, and Richard the son is carrying on. And he had a tremendous ministry.
With him too, isn't he?
Yeah, their family is very involved. So the torch goes on. It was the same with Moses. The torch goes on. There's no man. Yeah, when they die, someone can't come in and take over.
Same with Graham.
Yeah, Billy Graham.
Franklin and then his son.
Are we to you?
Yeah.
Just finish the rest of the chapter, because I want to finish this.
And Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the people of Israel obeyed and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. And there had not arisen a prophet since in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. None like him for all the signs and the wonders that the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, and for all the mighty power and all the great deeds of terror that Moses did in the sight of all Israel.
Okay, so Moses did succession training. That was a big deal in the government when I left next year, succession training. He trained someone to take his place. But then we get Moses' epitaph. What's stressed isn't that Moses knew God, but that God knew him. Joshua goes on and does a great job at what God tells him to do, but that doesn't diminish what Moses did at all. Moses had a personal intimacy with God. He talked with God. He had performed so many miracles with God's help. And he had so much power. He led a nation of millions across the desert. There's people that may have been greater rulers or greater prophets or greater priests, but not one man that had it all. That was Moses. And that is where we're going to leave Deuteronomy. And next week, Joshua.
Don't we do Psalms 91?
Yeah, we're gonna throw a psalm in there. Yeah.
Psalms 91?
Next week, yeah, but I don't anticipate the psalm.
And then do we have time to both of it?
Yeah, I don't anticipate the psalm taking too long, but we'll see. I anticipate whatever psalm in Joshua. Can you, Olga? Can you hand me the prayer? My daughter-in-law Trina has. Oh, let me.